Salts are surround us. Whether they are good or not for living things, especially humans, they play an important role on Earth. So, what is the actual meaning of salts? Is it a substance that can be consumed by organisms? Or is it a substance that's responsible for building the structure of non- and living things? Thus, the meaning of salts is the ionic compounds, that metals or ammonium ions that replace the hydrogen ions in acids. So, the salts can be generally assumed as compounds that consists of cation that commonly from the metals or ammonium, and anions from the non-metals. The salts or minerals containing various types of salts, for example magnesium sulfate, lead-2 sulfate, calcium fluoride, and calcium carbonate, or limestone, can be found in the Earth's crust. Other salts like potassium and magnesium chloride, potassium bromide, sodium chloride and magnesium sulfate easily can be found in the sea. Salts can be used in agriculture such as chemical fertilizers and pesticides productions. Salts of fertilizers include ammonium chloride, ammonium nitrate, ammonium phosphate, and potassium chloride. Meanwhile, the examples of salts used as pesticides are mercury chloride, sodium chlorate, 5, sodium arsenate, copper-2 sulfate, and many more. Salts also can be used in medical purposes like potassium chloride that's used as substitute for patients who need a low sodium salt intake. Barium sulfate for X-ray of patient's stomach, potassium manganate 7 that can kill bacteria, and sodium sulfate decahydrate or known as Glauber salt is used as laxatives. Plus, salts are also used in food industry. For example, the most famous one is monosodium glutamate or message, which acts as food additive in food preparation. Other common salt is sodium chloride to give salty taste and also used as a food preservative. Meanwhile, the uses of salts in industry are sodium hypochlorite for bleaching agent and disinfectant, and sodium carbonate decahydrate is used making soda lime glass. That's a lot of uses of salts in our daily life. There are some colors of common salts. For example, that salts of potassium, sodium, ammonium, aluminium, calcium, iron, zinc, carbonate, nitrate, chloride, sulfate, are white and solid and colorless and aqueous. For iron 2 ion is green in both state, but the color of iron 3 ion is brown and solid and aqueous. Now, let's move on to solubility of the common salts. In this part, we will determine the solubility of common salts. So, here is the rules for some common salts based on their solubility, whether they are soluble or insoluble salts. First rule is no spams are soluble. Second, solubility are insoluble. Third, chlormerpag are insoluble. And the last one, Ca are insoluble. So, what are they? Rule number 1 is no spam are soluble. No stands for nitrate. All salts containing nitrate are soluble, such as lithium nitrate, magnesium nitrate, and calcium nitrate. S stands for sodium. All common salts of sodium are soluble. For example, sodium chloride, sodium carbonate, sodium hydroxide. P is not for phosphorus, but it stands for salts containing potassium, such as potassium bromide, potassium carbonate, potassium hydroxide. And the last one stands for ammonium salts like ammonium chloride, ammonium sulfate, ammonium nitrate, and ammonium carbonate. And also that need to be mentioned is all ethanoate salts are soluble. For rule number 2 is solubility are insoluble. So here is for sulfates. Salts containing sulfate are soluble except lead-2 sulfate, barium sulfate, and calcium sulfate. Thus, Pb is lead, Ba is barium and Ca is calcium. For this lesson we just focus on these 3 common salts. Next is chlormerpag. Chlo stands for chloride followed by mer is mercury, Pb here is lead, and Ag is silver. Thus, all chloride salts are soluble except lead, mercury and silver chloride are not soluble. This rule also can be used for other halogens ions like bromide and iodide. We go to the last rule. All Ca are insoluble. It stands for carbonate and hydroxide. And it also can be used for phosphate salts. So, All salts that have these anions are insoluble except if these anions possess sodium, potassium and ammonium in the compound. Because by knowing the first rule that salts which have sodium, potassium, ammonium are soluble. In other words, if these anions like carbonates, hydroxides, and phosphates consists of group 1 elements or ammonium in the compound, they are soluble salts. As long as the compounds that contain both soluble ions or the salts are partially soluble are considered as soluble. Here is a summarization of solubility of common salts as a conclusion for this part.